Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do, as it will feature both an interview of a prominent figure within the hobby as well as a product preview rather than a product review. With that, instead of Aaron and myself doing the preview, we thought that it would be much better to let the creator of the product speak for himself, as well as sharing some of his experiences within the hobby. So joining us now is Dr. Brian Price of President's Choice Trading Cards. Dr. Price, thank you so much for coming on to join us tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. So quite a few of our listeners are relatively new to the hobby as well. For our listeners who are new and who may not be familiar with yourself, could you just start by sharing some background on your career in the hockey card world?
Well, tell most of them to think about their grandfather, and that's the category that I probably fit in. So, I started out as a collector, and you'll find out age very shortly because when I was 6 or 7 years old, my family moved from downtown Toronto with a typical situation where you live with your grandparents. And then, of course, the Downsview developed, which is now almost in the middle of the city, but at that time it was very far up north. And so I lived in a house where they were building houses up and down the street. So after I would have my dinner each night, just before it got dark, I'd take my little wagon out and I would go to the different construction sites and I would collect glass pop bottles. You don't see them too often anymore, but you would get 2 cents for each bottle if you took it back to the variety store. And of course, because it was a construction site, the bottles were extremely muddy and it would rain or whatever. So every Saturday morning, I'd put the bottles that I had collected during the week in my garage and I'd wash them out with the hose. And I would take them up to the corner variety store. It was called Lover's Variety Store on Keele Street. And they give me 2 cents for every bottle. And so I would have $1.20, $1.50. I mean, as many bottles as I could find and the wagon would take. But then you could buy cards for 5 cents a pack. And so putting my age down now, you can calculate it. I bought a 1954-55 Parkhurst. That was the first set I bought. And one of the major errors that I made was after I opened the pack and put the big wad of gum in my mouth and soften it up so you could chew it, I wrapped up in a ball in my hand the wrapper, and I tried to throw it in a little wastebasket they had, try to get 2. They didn't have 3-pointers then, but I tried to get a 2-pointer. And I should have kept all those wrappers because they became very, very valuable. But I got, I saved the 54-55 Parker set in hockey and the 54-55 top set in baseball. I don't even think it was a 54-55. I think Topps just called it a 54 set. And I kept on going back and doing the same thing. And I had hundreds of packs. And I was very, very fortunate that I played with, shoot them heads and tails and knock over cards or whatever with my extras. I put my sets away, and years went by, and my mother, God bless her soul, may she rest in peace, kept everything, kept them in plastic boxes throughout public school, junior high, high school, university, dental school. And I was able to keep all of my stuff back then and still had it. And I always had at least one set, and I never put elastics around them to ruin the first card and the last card. And all the things that you do, the stuff I put in my spokes were my 5th copy or 6th copy of a card. And so I really had a tremendous collection. I then got involved in, went to university, became a dentist. Then I started opening up dental centers and shopping malls, and I opened them right across Canada and went public, and then sold my interest. And by about 45 or 46 years old, I had retired. And I decided to go back and fill in some of the blanks on some of the sets I didn't have, or upgrade some of there were a lot of offcuts in Parkhurst in those days. So I didn't care back then. I didn't know any different. I thought that's okay. And then I went back to try and put all those sets together and get them in the best condition I could. And I went to a store called Sluggers. And Sluggers was around Young and Steele's. And I was going through cards and picking the ones I wanted. And the owner of Sluggers said to me, he said, you franchise dental offices and had them all across the country. So I said, yeah. He said, well, I'd like to do that with trading cards. I'd like to do that with my store. So I said, well, all right, but I'm retired. So why don't we do this? I'll work and put a franchise agreement together for you and franchise your 2 other stores that you have employees at. But I want cards back in trade. I don't want to be paid. I don't want to give me the cards I need. And so we did that. And I got a franchise agreement for him. And I took the managers of each of his store. They became franchisees. And he said, let's go. Why don't you join the company? I said, no, that's not for me, but I really enjoyed it. He said, well, take a look at this. And he took out a manila folder. And I started reading the documents. And the first letter was in a folder, just written on a piece of paper from a guy named George Kennedy, who owned Parkhurst Products. It said, I hereby give Jack Eisenstein and Ray May all of the rights I have to the name Parkhurst. There was no trademark, but he, having that product and having the company that built Parkhurst and made the gum, he had the right to do that. So he gave it to them. And then I looked at the next page, and they incorporated a company. He was Parkhurst Products Limited. They incorporated Parkhurst Products Inc. And I turned the page over, and it says, please file your income tax return. I turned the next page over, and it's a threat. If you don't file your income tax return within 2 weeks, we're going to do this and that. And then finally, I took a look at the last page, and the company was dissolved. I said, you guys are typical card guys. You had a great idea, but you now I said, if I run down to Queen's Park, I can take that name away from you. I said, but I won't. So let's do this. I said, I will be your partner. I'll own 50% and each of you own 25%, but I will have 100% of the votes because you guys have proven your competence in this field. And they said yes. So I got the trade name Parkhurst. I trademarked it rather, and off we went, and off I went to the NHL to try and get a license. And unfortunately, at that time, they had originally it was Topps and the sub-licensee of O-Pee-Chee, but that year they had licensed Score, they had licensed Upper Deck, and they had licensed Pro-Set. And the woman who was the head of licensing there, she said to me, there's just no way we can do another one. Why don't you go to the different licensees and see if you can do a sub-license like O-Pee-Chee was doing with Topps. So I went and I met with everybody, and different things happened. Some of them untowards, but we'll share that with you. But what happened is I got a sub-license with a company in Dallas, Texas called Pro-Set. So Pro-Set brought Parkhurst back in 1991, I guess it was. And then it was very, very successful in 91. And in 92, Pro-Set went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So they fired their hockey brand manager, and they fired a whole bunch of people down there. And they asked me if I would, in order to do Parkhurst, if I would travel to Dallas each week and run the hockey brand. So I flew back and forth for a year, and we did the 92-93 version. And then they went to Chapter 7, which is final bankruptcy. So I took my license from Pro-Set, and I went to Upper Deck. And I won't bore you with the Upper Deck stories, but I was only there for 2 years, and we didn't work out. And so finally, at the end, I had basically retired again. And then in 1998, the head of the Players Association, a guy by the name of Ted Saskin, came to me and asked me if I would be a player. They had done Be a Player 2 years with Upper Deck. They had done it for 2 years with Pinnacle. In the second year of Pinnacle went bankrupt. And so they didn't want to go back to Upper Deck, and I made Be a Player in 1998, 99. And then I said to him, look, if I'm going to be in this business, I want to do a little bit more. And that's when they allowed me to do my third brand, which was in the game Memorabilia. And that's the year I bought the Vezina pads we can talk about. But and so that's how I started. So I ran in the game from, I guess, 1998, late 98 through 2014. The landscape of the trading card business changed a lot. Upper Deck had their exclusive in hockey. And I made the decision to sell, not the company, but I sold the assets to Leaf, and had a 2-year hiatus, which I had sort of agreed not to make trading cards anymore. I didn't really agree, but I felt that it was the right thing to do. And I got sort of bored, and I started making the cards for President's Choice really for myself, and then decided to get involved. So that brings you like almost right up to date. But President's Choice has been around since 2016, so 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
My story, and I'm sticking to it.
There you go. And just sticking with a little bit of your time in the hobby, obviously throughout your time, there have been a number of different ideas and innovations that you've brought into the hobby. Would you say that there are one or two that stick out to you as being things that you're most proud of?
There's a bunch of things because I never really had a boss. And so any idea that good or bad that I came up with, I could do, whether it worked or it didn't work. And if it didn't work, I can give you a list of things that I've done that just didn't work. And they're now my personal collectibles, and there's a warehouse full of them. But some of the things that I'm pretty proud of, let's say, I remember in the early days of memorabilia cards, there was a tremendous amount of pack searching. There was squeezing, there was measuring, there was all kinds of things. And what the manufacturers did was they put in a piece of cardboard, and that piece of cardboard was thicker than the memorabilia cards, so that, basically you knew if you got the piece of cardboard, that definitely wasn't a memorabilia card, it was too thick. So I decided to come up with a program called He Shoots, He Scores, which was a decoy card, but the decoy card also had points value, and the points value you collect, so you get a 1, a 3, a 5 point, or 10 point in any pack. You put those together, and we would get hundreds of these huge packages of cards, and then you'd get a card. I think they were usually numbered out of 20 maximum, and there was probably up to 20 or 25 cards, can't remember each one, but let's say 20 or 20 cards, and there's 20 of each, so 400 cards. And so we just had these reams of points, and we bought this a chipper, the things that they when they cut down a tree, they throw it in, and the chips. All we use those to throw all these cards into to shred them all. And so I was really, really proud of the fact that not only were we decoying our memorabilia cards, but we made something out of it that the collector benefited for collecting those. So that's probably one that comes to mind. Another one comes to mind is my made-to-orders, which I'd never done before. And you would get a made-to-order a card as an insert in a product, and then you could go to a list of whether it was one piece of memorabilia, one player, or two pieces of memorabilia, one player, or one piece of memorabilia, two players, up to three, all kinds of different varieties. And that was extremely successful, and those cards are still fairly valuable today. And the last one I can think of offhand is Ultimate Memorabilia, where I was the first to put cards in holders. And we started out with, one card per pack, never been done before, at cost prices and values that were the largest ever before in individual cards. And now you go back and you look at all that stuff, and everyone is sort of doing similar things, and that's good. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool that you mentioned the He Shoots, He Scores. Back when I was in college, I opened a case of 2013-14 Heroes and Prospects, and was able to send in a box full of the decoys and get a Travis Konechny redemption card. So that was cool.
Travis Konechny's cool because I remember he was one of the young guys in the OHL, and he had to get the special dispensation, and we had to go to his mother and get a deal. I think he was like 15 years old, whatever. But it's also, it just came to my mind that when we did it for Between the Pipes, it was called He Shoots, He Saves.
Yes. Yep. Correct.
The funny thing about when you go back and I get emails about this all the time, is collectors, they remember more about my stuff than I do. They can give you complete checklists, and remember you did that or you did this. And I said, geez, I haven't even thought about that in years. But the collectors are like great. And I spend a lot of time on the boards, private messaging with guys who really are just really stirring up the past, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, collectors definitely have a long memory, that's for sure. So seeing as you have such a long history in the hobby, you've seen just about everything there is to see. But looking towards the future, what do you hope to see in the hobby that sort of grows this hobby for the future? When looking at the kids and things like that.
Yeah, as a manufacturer, that is the most important question, and it was that was as important when I started as it is today. But I have to tell you that I personally don't see things going in the right direction. And the problem really is it's become a business more than a hobby. And the manufacturers, and I certainly understand why, because they're paying a fortune to the licensors, and they're just changing the dynamic so much that you're going from a guy who used to buy a pack of cards and go through it and got them, need them, got it, to guys that are only going to breakers, and they're buying slots, and they're going to, cards that don't exist, but they're virtual cards. I don't know the answer to the question. It is an extremely important question. I'm just a little guy on the side now that if tomorrow people say I don't like what you're making, I'll just stop making it. I don't know the answer, but I don't believe the direction it's going right now is the answer. I talked to my grandson who's, just lives and breathes and bleeds hockey. And we talk about trading cards, and he says, like, I can play video games and put my face and my friend's face on the players' heads and whatever. I don't need to look at a card where there's a static image of a guy and his stats from last year. I get his stats from last night. And it's sad. What I do like to see, though, and of course we don't see it too much anymore because the shows have been postponed for the moment, is I like to see fathers and sons or fathers and daughters, and it's spilling down from one generation to the next. But with e-cards and virtual cards and the things that are going on, long gone is the Gotham Needhams, which made this into a hobby. And when you look at some of the pricing that's going on, and you look at where those funds are coming from, there's now syndicates to buy cards in auctions, and they're buying this card for $400,000 in 1 year, and the next year it's worth 1.2. It's not a Honus Wagner. It's a guy who tomorrow could be hurt and never play again, and that card will be flushed down the toilet and put in the spokes of a bike, if there are any bikes anymore by that time. So it's an extremely important question. I don't have a clue as to what the answer is.
That's fair.
A good way to answer that question.
Or not.
Yeah. So we've talked about you a bit, and now turning to President's Choice trading cards. Would you just be able to share some background a little bit on the company, such as kind of what the motivation was for you with starting President's Choice?
Yeah, it started, as I said, in 2016, and just the idea of more or less just making cards for collectors, going back to making made to orders for whoever wanted them. I then, I had at that all during the course of In the Game, I had a blog called Prez Says, P-R-E. We're in Canada, so Z, S-E-Z, and so I was like the president. I was always the president in the game. Big deal. I'm the president of my own company. So I came up with the name President's Choice, and I trademarked it. And it was a great story. I get a cease and desist because of my trademark application from Loblaws. And so I didn't know whether to hire a lawyer and have lawyers go back and forth with law or deal with it myself. So I decided to deal with it myself. So I responded to their letter saying, I'm really, really sorry, but could you point me in the direction of your website that shows me your brand of hockey cards? And I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've applied for a trademark for President's Choice for hockey trading cards. And they said, well, no. I said, well, not no. Yes, that's what I've done. That's what my application is. And unless you have a trademark for hockey cards, I said, I'm not going to make frozen foods and things like that. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to open a bank, a financial institution. So they said, well, that's not good enough. We're going to fight with you, and it's going to cost you a fortune. I said, well, it may cost me a few bucks. I said, but it'll be fun. It'll give me something to do. I mean, I'm not doing anything. It'd be a big fight because I think you're going to lose. So they said, okay, I'll tell you what. We'll leave you alone, but you give us the trademark, President's Choice for trading cards, and we'll give you a license for $1 a year as long as you're in business. So as long as we don't show that someone else has got that trademark, that's okay with us, and you can use it for hockey cards, but we'll own it. I said, geez, that's a really good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of it. I said, but when I go to sell my company one day, the asset that I have is my sales, my equipment, and my trade name. So I said, that's a good idea. Why don't you do this? Write me a check for $100,000 so that I never have to worry about not getting any money for my trade name. And then I'll take it for a dollar a year. They said, are you crazy? We're not giving you any money. I said, see you in court. And that was it. I never heard from them again. Never heard a word. So
Wow.
it was good fun starting it. So basically, since I wasn't doing anything in the game, and I just decided to I was in Florida for the winter, so we opened the company in Florida, and I hired a guy down there to run everything for me. And I really just made just a few different cards, mostly, well, pretty much all retired players, and put on all the different, where I had good memorabilia, put down all the different targets for made to orders, and I started making them. And then I said, you know what, this is fun. Why don't I do a Toronto Maple Leafs 100th anniversary? So I made blue and white Centennial. That was a lot of fun because I got to call all the guys up again that I had dealt with for so many years that in the game and get all the signatures and whatever. Then I did Blue Blanc et Rouge, and that was fun. And that's when things started happening in the hobby with this lawsuit between Upper Deck and Leaf. And that's sort of the time where it started to get more difficult to run the business. I really found out about it most when I did my Solitaire, which was my multi-sport product. And guys that I had been doing business with for many, many, many years were sort of avoiding responding to my sales requests. And I realized afterwards that they could get into an issue with Upper Deck. And if you're a Canadian store, you have to have Upper Deck. You can't function without it. And I understand that. But they had concerns about carrying anyone else's products during this battle that's going on, and the battle is still going on. So that was really the reason for switching Game Use, President's Choice Game Use, which the boxes were made, the inserts were done, the little plastic boxes were made. And then finally I had to make a decision, I guess about 4 months ago. I had to go left or I had to go right. And then I decided to, take the easy way out. At a certain time in your life, you stop being a fighter and you start try to be a lover. And so that's why we did it. So President Choice really is just, it's really inspired by any idea. Most of my ideas are inspired by collectors. I just did a set of goalie goals, and the whole idea came out of Hobby Insider. And I work with 3 or 4 guys behind the scenes. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it's great. And something else, if anyone else, they like to see come up, if it's doable, if I have the memorabilia left over, we'll just go ahead and do it. It's fun.
That's very, very interesting. No, like that goalie goal set, like when I saw the previews for that, phenomenal. Like just some phenomenal looking cards. And again, just seeing that inspiration behind, the forums and seeing a bunch of collectors talk about what they would like and seeing you bring that to life in such a quick turnaround time was unbelievable. This kind of touches on that, but can you just talk about some of the unique things that President's Choice does in the hockey card market as far as the content and distribution methods? And going on with that, just sharing a bit about the focus that you and President's Choice just have on customer service and that really direct to collectors approach that you like to use so often.
Well, the customer service, I like to, unless it's just something like the post office didn't deliver your card, or things like that. I'm not inspired to get involved in those sort of things. But certainly if a customer's got a problem with the manufacturer of the card, I want to talk to them about it. If they have, I can't tell you how many times I've emailed customers swatches of memorabilia and say, okay, these are the 3 that I have. Which one do you want on the card that you want? Why not? I'm making a card for them. And this is extremely interesting that you brought it up. When I did a card prior to this release, when I did a card that was out of 3, I would put the first card on the website, and then you could order 3 cards. And if you saw a swatch that had a part of an emblem that you liked, and that was the card that was on the website, that was card number 1. If you bought card number 2, you didn't get that card because I would have to have a jillion cards on the website. But it's the right way to do it. So for in the game use, I'm going to my old name, President's Choice Use, we decided that we're going to put every card on the website. Not only can we do every card on the website, now I've got a total history of all of what the emblems are like. So if someone wants to fool around with an emblem and try and sell a 4 or 5 that's got this on it, but it doesn't, I've got the original image of that. So when we're finished with this one, or sometimes if we have a smaller insert set, we're going to try and go back and put back on the website all the other cards that are still in inventory. That could be a 3 out of 5, a 4 out of 5, a 5 out of 5. And instead, right now, all we've got is what the 1 out of 5 is, but we have 3 left. So we're going to do that. So long and the short of it is, most of the customer service, I don't mind doing myself. What else do I have to do? And then I'm an old guy with nothing to do. So I don't mind it, and I really enjoy it. And 95% of the customers are great. And the other 5% are foreign. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. They're also great guys, but I don't quite understand what they're saying. Now, they speak better French, German, Italian, Czechoslovakian than I do. But I sometimes get emails that I think that, hey, this guy's peeved at me. But he's not. It's just the way it's being said. And when I question what they say, so I take the 95% are easy to recognize as good guys, and the other 5% are hard to recognize, but they're good guys. I don't really have any customers anymore that I don't enjoy working with, because if I did, I just wouldn't work with them. We're that small that I would just say, you know what, this is not a good relationship. So you go your way and I'll go mine. But so it's great when 95, 85% of your customers, you really know them. Now, I couldn't know them if I saw them on the street, because we don't deal in iChat, whatever. But certainly if you say to me, your name is Crease Collector, I'd say, oh, geez, I remember all the stuff we've done. And that's the fun part for me. That's what my hobby. And that's
fun for me too.
That's the best way to put it. This business is my hobby.
Makes sense. Makes very, very, very good sense.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that you're planning on going back and putting some of the other serial numbers that you still have up on the website. That's one thing. I was looking on your website today, actually looking at some of the game use stuff, and we'll get into that later. But just being able to see every single unique copy is such a cool and different, idea within the hobby. And I think, like you said, it is the right thing to do, and just let people see, what's available and understand what they're getting. So props to you on that for that idea.
Sometimes sometimes the easy way out is not the way to go. So you learn and you go back and you fix it.
Absolutely. And then turning to just kind of some fun questions, not necessarily related to President's Choice or to President's Choice game used, but just some things that we wanted to ask you, just from your experience in the hobby. So, the question that I thought of is, one of the things that you're known for most in the hobby, obviously, is purchasing those George Vezina goalie pads to use in cards. Maybe just share a little bit about that story and what made you pursue that, and what were some of the most memorable moments of that process of purchasing the pads and then using the pads for cards.
And all the threats I got? You want me to include those or exclude those?
Yeah.
Well, I started collecting. So as you recall, I had a tremendous amount of cardboard, good cardboard. And in the early 2000s, late, well, I guess when I decided I was going back into the business, so around 2000, I started buying memorabilia, and the idea was I bought memorabilia for my own personal collection, but if in the game wanted it and needed it, I would sell it across in the game. And so I was told by someone who was very well known in the hobby that my cardboard had peaked in its value and I should get rid of it. Now this is before authentication and grading and the whole thing. There was no such thing. And so I sold all my cardboard, and I had a fair chunk of money, and I was at all these shows, and this vintage memorabilia was around, and I started buying wools. I started with some early Maple Leaf wools, had some really good stuff, and I was buying what I needed for the company, which was more rookies and stuff like that, and all-star games stuff for the current players that were within the parameters of my license. And then I was buying the vintage for myself, and then started to roll the vintage into the game. And so people knew me, and they knew that if it was something and it was a deal, it was a done deal. I didn't pontificate and prolong things. I just sort of said, you want 8,000, I'll give you 7,000. Okay, give me 7,500. Okay, done deal. And the money exchange hands. I wouldn't say I'll call you in a week. I'll wait in a month. And can I see it? I'll ask my wife. So a lot of stuff came my way, especially when I was at the shows and some of the U.S. shows where they didn't have a lot of people to sell their hockey memorabilia to. It was a fourth class in the classes of sports for collectibles, and the pads appeared, and there was a letter there stating that what the tag number was, and these were little blue Dymo tags. Remember the Dymo labelers? You've turned around in a little circle and you pressed it, and there you got an A, and then you turned it around and you got a B and you got a C, and then you press the cut button and then you peel the stick off. Well, that's what the Hockey Hall of Fame, that's how they identified their equipment. In the Hall of Fame, it wasn't where it is today. It was down at the CNE, and they had no budget. They had no money. And so the way that they got the money to buy some stuff was they sold other stuff. And so this stuff had come out of the Hall of Fame many years earlier, got into a collection, and then whoever's collection it was had this guy who was out there selling it on their behalf. And he gave me a price. The price was good. And I checked with the guys at the Hall of Fame, and they basically said, we'd like you to buy it and donate it. I said, it's not Christmas, guys. Let's just hold on here. You want to buy it, you buy it. But if I'm buying it, I'm not donating it. So they knew all about it. And when it came out that I bought them, and then when it came out that I was gutting them, they sort of danced around their position on it. They weren't fraudulent, but they didn't really never mentioned that I had spoken to them before and said, why don't you guys do it? And there was an awful lot of people who basically said it was just the worst thing in the world to do. And there were others who said, well, we would have never seen them if they were in some guy's collection, and now we can all share them and each have a little piece of history. I voted with those guys, of course, but I understood the other guys. I never said anyone else was wrong. I said, but you know what? I paid the money. I bought them. They're mine. And I sort of feel that I can do whatever I want with them. But they were tremendous for trading cards in the hobby. We were everywhere. We were in USA Today, the New York Times, the LA Times, all the papers across Canada. It was a big front page story in the sports section. So it helped trading cards in general, but certainly helped in the game. And it was in the game Memorabilia. Certainly helped that to get off the ground. Like, gave it a flying start, to be honest with you. So I still get, I guess I could say crapped on. I could say that today. I still get some emails today to that, but I think there are more people out there that have Vezina cards now that would, that have their piece of the pad. Then, so I think it's certainly worthwhile.
Yeah, that's cool. And I just have a follow-up with that as well. I don't know if this is something that you do, but do you have any old in the game cards in your personal collection, or any cards with those Vezina goalie pad pieces in them?
So here's what I did. I made myself one of each with no back on it, and I put them in a frame, and they're framed around the article. I think it's in the Toronto Star about the Vezina pads, and around the frame is these cards. And my concern was one day if that picture ever got stolen, sold, whatever, that they would rip it apart and get the cards and then put them out on the street. And no, they can't. There's pieces of pad in there, but there's no back to the card. But yeah, that's my set of those. It's not really a set, it's sort of a half set, but I can also say they're the only ones that have no back on them.
True.
That's smart.
Blank back variation, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's cool.
I think I did that once.
Yes, you did. And the
collector will tell me, maybe you'll be the one, but I think I did blank backs once.
Yeah, you did them in the 72 set.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
See, stuff like that, stuff like the 72 set, that was just fun. It was just fun to do because so many things were going on there. There was a Summit Series, and there was a WHA and the NHL, and it was just a fun thing to get to speak to all those guys, get all of their contracts signed, and get all their autographs in. It was just a fun project.
Absolutely. That sounds like one too.
Yeah, 1972, the year in hockey, I think we called it.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Speaking of all the memories, you've been in the game for a long time. Do you have any memorable hobby moments in your career, whether it be like as a collector or as a card manufacturer? Like if you can kind of narrow that down.
That's tough because
I
there's
know.
so many things and so many things I can't remember. I mean, okay, so I know what the most memorable was, but I want to just I want to talk about the second one for a moment. I really had a blast creating in the game land. So we always had a booth at the shows, and one year Al Sinclair, who ran the show, I guess the show got a little smaller. He didn't have as many booths, so he put this big curtain up there, and the whole hall wasn't taken. I said, Al, what are you doing that for? He said, well, we're condensing a little bit. There's no sense me renting space we don't need. I said, the next show, just give me all that space. Just give it to me. He said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know yet. I said, but I'm going to do something. And we created in the game land, and we had games and wheels and prizes, and we played Deal or No Deal. And I had the Calder Cup there once, and I had a bunch of juniors, and I had my All-Star collection, my All-Star jersey collection there. That was really a lot of fun, an enjoyable moment. But my most memorable moment was when I decided to bring back Parkhurst inside in the game, and Gordie Howe was my spokesperson. And we had a press conference at the Hot Stove Lounge at Maple Leaf Gardens with Gordie. Gordie was in town with his wife, Colleen. They were both alive at the time. Colleen passed away much earlier. But I spent the night before with them to dinner with my wife, the whole day with them. And then they were supposed to leave at 5 o'clock. And they said, you know what? We had such a nice time. Why don't we have dinner again with your wife? And so they stayed over the second night. Of course, I paid the bill, but that's okay. And we spent 2 days with them. And I mean, he is amazing. But watching them interact, it's like you got Mr. Hockey, but really Mrs. Hockey was the one who was calling all the shots. It was just a really, really, that's probably my most memorable, because he was one of my favorite players, even though I was a Maple Leafs fan as a kid. But he was one of my favorite players, and probably was one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. So that's probably my most memorable in the trading card business. But I got an opportunity to just meet about anyone that you can. The retired players are so much different than the current players. It's just the way the world is, but just wonderful, wonderful guys. And it was amazing. What was amazing to watch. I'll give you a story that was just great. I was doing a product called Ringside Boxing, and no one had done boxing cards for many, many years. So of course someone said, why don't you do boxing? I said, sure. And I went to the Boxing Hall of Fame, and I can't remember the year. It's probably got to be around 2010, 2011, something like that. And I was going there to get a bunch of autographs. And I'm just trying to think of his name. He was an Italian boxer, was a champion, and he fought Emil Griffith. And Emil Griffith, who was also a champion, was really, really sick, and he had an aide with him. And you could tell he was down and out. And this Italian guy, I'll probably get it wrong, Antifermo Vito, and whatever. He was there in a beautiful blue suit with a white tie, and we were talking, and he did his signatures. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I work in a bank and whatever. So here are two guys that boxed against each other. Emil Griffith was the champion. He's down and out, looks like he's homeless. This other guy looks like he just, got off an episode of Billions or Succession or one of those shows. And I gave him like $8,000 in cash for his signing. And I watched him walk over to Emil Griffin, who was sitting there, and he gave him a hug. And as he was giving him a hug, he took the money that I just gave him and shoved it in the breast pocket of the sports jacket he was wearing.
Wow.
Talk about a memorable moment. Of course, I know it's not hockey, but boy, oh boy.
Still.
I couldn't, it was just, he didn't say a word. He just did it. I don't know if Emil looked in there a minute later and said, where did this come from? But yeah, I think his name was Vito Antifermo. I can't remember. But so there's been a lot of them. If I could remember most of them, I should have kept a diary. That's what I should have done, because as you get older, you start to forget things. But I have lots of people around to remind me. So those are probably the most memorable moments.
Yeah, absolutely, for good reason too. And then just turning to the 2020 President's Choice Game Used product, we've mentioned it here and there throughout the night, but just to focus on that, as it's your newest product, and like we've said, it's the first product that you're releasing since Solitaire. Could you just give a little bit of information about the inspiration for the product and what caused you to produce it?
You know what? It's the inspiration is such a long time ago, because I've been sitting on this for such a long time. I got to say, we probably started making these cards close to 2 years ago. And it was really just a takeoff of In the Game Used, where we just did all memorabilia cards, and we had to limit it to who we could, who we still had memorabilia for. And I just started making them, but we've come along with a lot of our newer ideas, and some of them taken from my original concepts with In the Game. Like we still have Blades of Steel, and we still have auto threads, and some of our newer ones since I started President's Choice, lumber graphs, paddle down with big pieces of the paddle from the card. So they're really all game use memorabilia, authentic game use memorabilia, probably mostly out of 1, 3, 5, occasionally out of 10, but no higher than 10. And what I did was I tried to, because we're taking down what was supposed to be a 6-card per box, I've lowered the prices on all of them. And again, based on the reaction that we've had today, it's very exciting. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an insert set every week, hopefully every Friday at noon. Today was a little late, but hopefully we've fixed all of those operational problems, and try to do every Friday at noon. Now, this was very, very interesting, is because as soon as we got on, it was supposed to be noon. Nobody knew about it. I kept on saying, coming soon, coming soon, coming soon, because I didn't want to give anyone an advantage for the 101 cards, or even the 1 of 3s or the 1 of 5s if there's a particular one that people felt they had a better piece of memorabilia than the others. And somehow, within seconds of sending out the newsletter, I don't know what people do in this world, if they're either on their computer, on their iPhone or whatever, but within seconds, there was a swarm after the 101 cards. Like, I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but one of the bigger Vezina collectors, it was like the 3-second rule. I don't know, he must have a program on his computer that says anything that's Vezina for sale comes on, let me know. Like within 3 seconds, that card was gone. And it's really fun to see, and guys are like amazing on how they do it. And then you get the odd guys just sending emails saying, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" And I said, I can't do that. Now everyone's going to look hopefully for 12 o'clock next Friday, and we're going to announce in advance which insert set it is. And hopefully, as we get into this, people will be looking on Friday afternoons to see what's coming out in the President's Choice Game Used. I think there's about 27 different insert sets. And,
wow, that's great.
Well, the other thing is
27 weeks.
Yeah, I don't have to stop. I mean, if this is going really well, in the 25th week, I can start to make something for week 28 or 29. I got insert ideas galore. We just started to make booklets now, and it's so much fun. Now I can put 8 pieces, 10 pieces of memorabilia on a booklet instead of a card that has a front and a back, and there's one in the front and the back. Not bad, but where do you put the legal text and the different? So now I can just make books, and I've got an artist now drawing for me, and I'm going to do some 3-page books, triple books, where there's a memorabilia on 1/3, there's a cut signature in the center third, and there's a hand-drawn colored image of the player on the other third.
Oh, wow.
And so we're starting to work on those. I think we've done Lindbergh. I think we've done Turk Broda. So we're starting to work on those. They're fabulous. And if no one wants them, that's okay, because I'll keep them. They're really great. I really enjoy having them.
That's fantastic. It seems like game use is going to be like the never-ending product.
Well,
keep going and going.
Yeah, if they want to try and make it so that distributors are only carrying Upper Deck products, and either they're forcing dealers or dealers feel that it's inappropriate for them to carry other products,
right?
So how it impacts. So I'll just do my thing, and I'll just do it this way, and it's you get tired of swimming upstream. And so instead, let's just go with the flow, and we'll go the other direction. If that's what collectors want. If they don't want it, I'll find out pretty soon. There's no doubt about that. No one is shy to tell me what things they don't like.
That's fair, and we applaud you for going your own way on that. And as far as the set by set release, as soon as I found out that you were doing that, to me I think that's a great idea personally, and I think collectors will be quite thrilled to go on week by week and have something to look forward to. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but what can collectors expect as far as the content goes of your new game used product?
Well, the next release is auto threads, which are autographed pieces of game used memorabilia. And so a player will autograph a piece of his memorabilia, which will be inserted into the card. So we have 51 cards out of 1, and we have another 18 cards out of 10. And then after that is an insert set called Bar Down. And we also have 5s, 3s, and 1s on Bar Down based on the amount of memorabilia you've had. So they're all goalie cards.
Nice.
Then Blades of Steel comes out with the Blades of Steel. Then there's Blades of Steel 101, and there's Blades of Steel quads. So that's week number 4. Then we have Captain's Row, a 4 and a 6. I'm going to have to decide whether I release all Captain's Row together, the 4s and the 6s, which I'll probably do. And then it goes on to Cup winners and decades and decadents and franchise leaders and pads and gloves. And so there's really something for everyone. There will be sets that will be all goalies, and that'll be a certain group of collectors. And there'll be all of them. There'll be people that I'm doing lace them up again with laces with a 1s and multiples, and so it's a lot of the stuff that people know, collect already, and they'll decide for themselves. There'll be weeks that certain people won't find anything that they're interested in, and that's fine. And there'll be other weeks like today's where you've got a lot of people who just took all 5 Gordie Howe cards. They took all 4 of them from the store, and then they ran to eBay and bought the 5th. And I think that's really cool. I really like that. But that's what President's Choice Game Used is all about. It's all about different categories, not all for you, but if it's nothing for you this week, wait 7 days and let's see what there is the following week. But there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Stick handles. I have 97 stick handles, which are the pieces of the names off the sticks. Now I'll tell you, that's because I did this a long time ago. I just bought a ton of playoff sticks, broken sticks at the playoff games. And I don't know when I'm going to come out with them because there's so much going on right now. But I've got I'm going to have a dual stick rack book of the 2 young kids in Montreal. I don't even know. I should probably email 3 of my collectors from Montreal before I even put them out for sale and just say, take them. Suzuki's one of them. And what's the other one? He's a Finn.
Kakaniemi.
That's the one. So I got 2 broken sticks, one of each of those. So there'll be a stick rack, dual book, and there'll be a stick handle with their names on it. And I'm really excited about that. I got another Austin Matthews stick, another Mitch Marner stick. So I don't even know when to put those out because, there's so much going on every Friday. I don't want to take people's eye off the ball and insert other things, but I guess I'm going to have to. I can't hang on for that long. So that's the kind of stuff that goes on all the time. Guys call me and say, hey, we just got these sticks from the whatever. And I say, bring them up. Let's take a look at it.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's cool. That's the fun part for me. That's really the fun part for me. Getting the memorabilia and then, getting the concepts, whether I invent the concept or a hobby insider invents the concept or any one of my customers that comes up with a concept. I just got one about 10 days ago called, someone said, why don't you put 8 cards of each team in a booklet and call it Octet? I said, that's a great idea. Let me just list the teams, go through all the memorabilia, and let's see if I got 8 guys on all the different teams in the league. Lo and behold, I did, and then now my designer's working on a design. Away we go.
Very cool. Very cool. So you touched a little bit, in that answer about some of the specific highlights of the product. Would you say out of all of the insert sets, if you have a favorite, or even if there's just one specific card in the product, maybe something like a Jonas Enroth stick card or something?
Yeah, right.
Your favorite?
I remember buying a Jonas Enroth LA Kings blocker.
Yeah.
Anybody else remember that?
Oh yeah, definitely. No, it's
I
gonna be
remember
cool to
seeing
see some
it and
cards.
deciding to buy it. I don't really know. I mean, I'm in love with all of my children, so it's not really nice to treat one better than another. But I think one of the ones that is sort of cool is I have a George Vezina bar down, which is a piece of the Montreal net, actually the goalpost, not the net part of the net, but the metal part of the net. And below it is a pad and a stick piece. That's pretty cool. Some of the Blades of Steel are great because I remember buying the vintage skates. Some of them I could only buy one skate. That's all that was available. I guess the collector had a pair and decided that they were worth so much money that he would sell one of them and keep the other one for free. I guess that was their concept. There's vintage quads that are pretty cool with good memorabilia. And there's some good, I have a lumbergraph of Charlie Conacher. And that's my first one because most of the time Charlie Conacher's signature is wider than 3.5, so you can't put it on a card. So this was the first Charlie Conacher I had on a stick that was small enough. So that would be one of the ones. I mean, but you have an awful lot of people looking at it who don't really know who Charlie Conacher is. So maybe to them, it's the Suzuki card is a better one than a Charlie Conacher. But those are the ones that I remember making. Lumbergraph's going to be a good week. That's going to be interesting to see people. I don't know how I'm going to do that one. Maybe we'll have a countdown and then release those or some kind to prevent people from, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, yeah, I definitely see your point about, loving all your children equally. It's definitely hard to choose a favorite, especially when you pour so much into every set and every one of your products.
I've put things on the boards where I've congratulated guys on buying the cards or thank them for finding a new home for one of the children.
Yeah.
It's just great. It really is fun.
You already touched on this a little bit, but for those listening who are interested, will there be a checklist made available for these sets that are being released?
Yes. Right now there is a checklist already of the AKA.
Okay.
As soon as it's released, now again, that was another problem today that didn't go up at nothing went up at the 12 o'clock. At the 2 o'clock when the cards were posted, the checklist didn't get up till 5 o'clock for another excuse of my webmaster, but there will be no excuses next week. I don't want to put the checklist up in front of the cards going on because that's going to be the cause of the problems I'm going to get into. I'd rather the day that I put them up, the checklist goes up so you know what's there. And then, of course, afterwards, the checklists remain up there. So eventually the checklist will build as the cards will build.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. I think that's pretty much all the questions we have about game use. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about either the product or just President's Choice or your experience in the hobby in general?
Not really. I just thank you guys for doing this kind of stuff because that's one of the things that the hobby needs is communicate for collectors so they know more than they're told by whoever's telling them. They get to touch and feel and squeeze all the people that are behind it. And so stuff like this, your podcast is extremely important. And then again, it's like I'm trying to be an open book. People want to contact me. I'm there to be contacted. And there's certain things that I can do. There's certain things I can't do. And I try to stay on the right side of that as much as I possibly can. But in staying on the right side of that, I also try and get collectors what they want. So try to be like the collectors company as opposed to the licensees or the licensors or whatever company. But like I said, the making of the cards is my hobby, and I certainly enjoy it. And I've made all 4 sports. When I did Sport Kings, of course, I made all 20 sports or whatever there were. And there's nothing better to make than hockey cards. I know it's down on the list, but I got to tell you, they may be the fewest number of collectors, but they are definitely the most passionate. And they're not here to take it and make it and put it online and sell it on eBay and auctions, whatever. They collect these things, and that's what's great about it. The manufacturers and the licensors have maybe have taken a little bit of the hobby definition away, but the collectors haven't. I mean, it's just amazing to me when I see guys post complete sets of something I made, 52 cards, 45 cards, and they're missing 2 or 3, and guys are and Hobby Insider guys are trying to bail them out. They saw it here. They said, "That's great. That's just great. That's the way it should be." And so I support it 100%. And I wish I could have the answer to your original question as to how to keep it going, but that answer I don't have. And nor do I have any control over what's going on. I'm just a little tiny minnow in this pond now. I used to be a fish, but and there are other sharks there, so I'm just a minnow.
Hey, you know what? We as collectors really appreciate it. What you're doing is not small by any means. And I always love to see you comment on the boards when someone does post a set of yours and you kind of tell a story about it. I really like to see that personally. It's really cool. And I can only imagine the pride that you feel when someone builds a set that you built in the past. It must be quite the feeling.
Well, like I say, I enjoy it. And I know some guys that have certain cards and certain sets and dealers who break product. And so I tried as best I can when I see a sort of a blank in someone's collection to help them find it or get it and put people in touch with other people. But I have to tell you, I'm coming up on a huge celebration very shortly. My 2500th post on Hobby Insider. I think I'm at 2488 or something. So I'm looking forward to that big celebration.
Nice. Very nice. Well, congratulations on that.
Dr. Price, do you just want to share, how people can find you and find your cards just to help promote President's Choice a little bit more?
Yeah, President's Choice is very, very simple. It's just President's Choice tradingcards.com. So that gets you to the store. And then if you want to get me at any time, you just email info@presidentschoicetradingcards.com. There's no apostrophe in President's. And it'll go to our administrator who's there, who will siphon the questions off. And but if it's for me, I get it immediately. There's no wait. And I have, like I said, I've got nothing else to do but answer them.
Well, that's great. Again, thank you so much for taking time to join us tonight, Dr. Price. We're really looking forward to seeing the rest of the Game Use inserts over the coming months.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So that was super fun, just hearing a bunch of different stories and experiences that Dr. Price has had throughout his awesome time in the hobby. And, as well as being able to focus on his newest product and just hear a little bit more about that. Just changing gears a little bit, we just wanted to update you guys quickly on the Sidney Crosby 0506 Upper Deck Young Gun BGS 10 Black Label that is being auctioned off by Golden Auctions. Just a reminder, that card is ending on Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, that being September 20th. And just a reminder, it's one of only 2 Crosby Young Guns to have received a BGS 10 Black Label grade. Again, the opening bid for the card was $1,500 US, and as of Friday night, the card stands at $17,000 US with 15 bids. So just going into our interactive questions for you guys. First, do you plan to purchase any cards from Dr. Price's President's Choice Game Used in the coming weeks or months? Are there any of the insert sets that Dr. Price mentioned tonight that piqued your interest, or maybe are there any players that you hope to see included in the product? And then just turning to the Crosby again, what do you think that Crosby BGS 10 Black Label Young Gun will eventually sell for come Sunday night? So like always, we will be posting these questions on our various social media accounts, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center Ice CC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.